We're so fancy with our music and our
Music fades out.
fades
The
out.
show begins. Welcome to another live stream of the Wicked Opportunities podcast. That, me, and all of you.
Me, me, Frank Spencer, the fourth.
The fourth, my youngest son, who's not young anymore. None of them are young anymore.
None of us are really. Mine's my young one is heading
Yours
off
are
to
almost 30
college.
and almost 20.
Mm.
I've got all of my approaching 30 or over 30 already.
But your youngest is exploring
My
your,
youngest son,
yes, that's right, your youngest son.
who is now 31. I'm old. Wow.
No, I mean, no.
You use these spaces to really talk about my
I
age
mean,
a
you're
lot.
young as heart, young at heart.
Rise above it all.
No, so he
He,
is
he
exploring.
has been exploring
So interesting.
the family tree.
Yeah, and I'm jealous because it's harder for us immigrants to
I thought about that this week when I was telling you about my great, 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 great grandfather, who is how far he's gone back now. His great, great, great grandfather.
but I love how this all came to be because obviously the geology part isn't something necessarily new to you all. You all have known for a while. You have a pretty cool background, but he,
Lady Diana Spencer is directly related to us.
I mean,
And of course, she was just a kindergarten teacher before she became famous.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and you know who else is directly in our family tree is Carrie Yules. So if you don't know who Carrie Yules is, he was the he was the lead in The Princess Bride. He got
Mm.
kidnapped and became the Dread Pirate Roberts, but he came back for his love, and yeah.
I mean, you're two truths and a lie. You have so many options. But the reason why Nathan got reignited into this sort of research is because the other day he picked up a phone number, a call from an
At
unknown number.
work,
Yeah, yeah.
somebody at work goes, "Hey, there's somebody on the phone for you," and he
Oh,
goes,
I thought it was his cell phone. That's really
"That's
funny.
weird."
Yeah,
Yeah, they called his job.
that's
That's
really
so
funny.
weird.
Yeah, yeah.
And that makes it even stranger. And so he gets on the phone and goes, "Hello?" And this little tiny voice is on the phone, little kid. "Hi, is this Nathan?"
I love your impersonation of little kids.
"Yeah, who is this?" He goes, "I'm calling from such and such school in Savannah, Georgia, which is where Nathan was born, and I was born as well. And all the way back 3 generations, Spencers were born.
Such and such school. I think it matters what school he was calling from.
Well, the name of the school is something Ida, something Wells, but he was like, it used to be, and of course I knew where this was going. It
Yeah.
used to be the Frank W. Spencer School, which is my great grandfather, Captain Spencer, who opened the river front and the port in Savannah, Georgia, when he was only 14 years old.
Mm.
And so Nathan, he had to do a
Right.
book report on the Spencers because he goes to the Spencer Elementary School. And Nathan was like, I'm gonna really get into it, and so there's a long story there, but
That's cute.
he's been doing the research. So
That's awesome. Well, that I think that we weren't planning this.
as a matter of fact, Nicole Baker Rosa,
Uh-huh.
our amazing futurist, the third part of Kedge, TFSX, also has a Spencer lineage.
She does.
We have to connect that because I had just found that my grandfather's brother, my grandfather, Frank Wilson Spencer Jr., his twin brother, Hugo Spencer, we always wonder where Hugo went. Because
Mm.
it's rough when one of you is named Frank and it's Frank, 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 and the other one comes out a minute
And
later and he's like, Hugo, I guess.
it's like that SNL
And
skit
sure
where
enough,
they go,
Hugo was like laters and he moved away.
the SNL skit where they go through all the
Yeah.
women names. Last one's always a little off.
Awesome.
And Hugo. Um,
Found Hugo and that Spencer clan as well. Who knows,
yeah,
Nicole? Who knows,
the
Nicole?
plot twist is that
Who
you and
knows,
Nicole
Nicole?
are related somehow.
We've always said we are.
Mm, mm, mm.
He's
Well,
probably like, that's too bad for me. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, welcome everyone to our next episode installation of the Wicked Opportunities live stream, which is part of the Wicked Opportunities umbrella. If you've joined us at all this year, you know that we're walking a path. We're going back into the vault, so to speak, and discovering that a lot of the stuff that we say is pretty evergreen around here, which is good and also bad because
Why is it bad,
well,
Yvette?
when are we gonna move past this so that, I don't know. It's good. It's all good. It's all good. So we went into the vault
I
and
saw a TikTok today, and it was a woman singing a song called "Who Put a Toddler in the White House?" Da,
yes,
da, da, da.
very
It's
good
the words are so
times.
great.
Very good times. But our conversation, I mean, it was absolutely, we talked about today's episode being very emergent, mostly because we didn't prepare too much in advance. But as futurists, we love emergence. But what's interesting,
Podcast should just sort of be like, "Oh yeah, I just have this thought,"
listen, listen, we have an entire course and four pre-recorded podcasts,
It's sitting right there already.
lessons in an actual course to back up what we're going to talk about today. So when I say we didn't prepare, that's a bit of a misnomer, because we absolutely always prepare. But I love how we just like sort of organically started talking about the Spencer lineage when we're going to be talking about sort of identity crisis, because I do think, poor Hugo had a bit of an identity crisis early on when
Very
he was the twin that was not chosen.
yeah.
Like, really, does his life change? Obviously, immeasurably. If he had a different name, if he came out a minute earlier, it's
Convinced.
wild,
I'm
actually. It's
convinced.
actually wild.
From the day he was born, his dad favored Frank over Hugo, and Hugo turned out to be the story at least is sort of delinquent, rebel.
I mean, I don't
Was
blame.
told by his dad at an early age, you need to hit the road. I don't want to
Listen,
see you again.
hashtag justice for Hugo. Hashtag
That's right.
justice for Hugo. I'm going to name, if
Yeah,
I have another child, which I will not,
yeah.
I will be naming him Hugo just in honor of your.
We found out that Hugo died in 1952 at the age of, no, that's not right. He died at the age of 59
Okay.
in 76.
Okay.
Got it.
So today we're going to be
Sorry.
going back into the vault, and I love sharing these maps because they're so amazing. Um, the artist that Alice that did these maps for us did such an amazing
She
job.
really did. She's so sweet too.
So hopefully you all can see this. I don't know why I can't see ourselves,
Very
but
talented and love doing this project.
yeah. So for each one of these months of podcasts that we did back in the day, she created a visual representation of the four episodes. And we're going to be talking about this topic again today, from identity crisis to extended reality. What we like to do on the Wicked Opportunities podcast is really lead with optimism and hope. I had a great conversation today with a futurist early this morning from Argentina.
Awesome.
And the fun part of that conversation, which took place at 8:30 a.m. our time, was that she spoke to me completely in Spanish, which I told you my neurons were firing quickly to try to keep up, because she talked in part about how, yeah, the tools are great. Her background is in psychology.
Mhm.
Tools are great. But what about hope? What about optimism? What about our relationship with complexity? It was like having a conversation with you, but completely in Spanish and a female.
I feel like I just diminished a bit. So,
Did you? Did you?
it's like me, but she speaks Spanish, the feminine energy.
I
I don't
mean,
know. What's wrong with
you
me?
have a lot of feminine energy. Here you go, Tom.
Yeah, we always zoom in on these maps all the time because they're so fun, and there's eight of them or
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, so good. In that course, of course, you can see all the maps. So
Yeah, I was gonna see if I had the course open.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure I did, but maybe I didn't get that far. That's a lie. I didn't. Oh, no, it's in another window. 1 second. I have too many things open.
I love that we can live stream and then we can um
Fumble with the
fumble through.
yeah,
Oh,
fumble.
Ron, I didn't know you were in Atlanta, so I'm in Savannah. person. So
So, for those of you that want uninterrupted access to the maps for each one of the months, and to have access to the curated podcasts and have everything, and some self-reflection opportunities, then I encourage you to join us on MyTFSX with a membership to the collective. As a member of the collective, that subscription level gets you access to this course for free as part of your membership, as well as the Dragonfly Journey, as well as the toolkit on
that's
MyTFSX. So lots of benefits from that subscription to MyTFSX. Again, many people are on MyTFSX as guest accounts, which is great, and you get lots of access there. One tier up is a member to what we call the collective, and that gives you access to this course and the other aspects that I just mentioned.
that's right.
So we want to talk about identity crisis today. We, at the time of the recording of these podcasts originally, referred to it as the escalating loss of contextual meaning related to tribal connections and individual purpose. So we'll talk a little bit about how we might define that, but again, still very valid, if not even more so, in 2025. And as we do on the Wicked Opportunities podcast, we lead with optimism and hope. And we take these wicked problems of, in this case, identity crisis, and we say, how can these be reframed using foresight and futures thinking to create a different, more transformative outcome? And in the case of identity crisis, we worked through 4 podcast episodes to use tools like CLA and 6 degrees of separation and point of impact questions and the like to reframe identity crisis as extended reality. And we define that as adopting and integrating a mutually interdependent reality that manifests the benefits of we over me. So when we're
Mm,
talking about extended reality, we aren't talking about the kind that's given to you by virtual reality. We're talking about extended reality in terms of this concept of really moving from, this I love how she depicted the CLA conversation that we had.
just
This
realized his hat that he's wearing.
Yeah, well, we don't
I,
shy away here
I
at the Wicked
feel
Opportunities
like if the
Podcast.
hats were purple, I might be a little bit more sympathetic. I love
So
purple.
we've got the MAGA guy. We didn't exclude Europe. We got Brexit guy over
Yeah.
here too.
Now we could add Calix since
Yeah,
he's on
there's so many things. Unfortunately, many more
Brexit
opposite.
and
Yeah, we have
Jexit.
so many things. Um, and from a metaphor, for those of you that are familiar with the CLA tool, I love the metaphor level. Obviously, when you get down to that part, we've got the cult of the selfie, the wall, and then we built back up. I love this idea of the prism instead of the selfie, which is really powerful. And
Seeing all the colors of the light.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And the bigger whole. So this is, past us. And again, when we decided to create the extended reality, or excuse me, the course on the MyTFSX, and to go down sort of memory lane, to go back into the vault this year, we knew that these things would still be relevant, but I don't think we understood how
How
relevant.
relevant, it's like they're probably more relevant now than they were when we first created them
Yeah,
as uh, original podcast
yeah,
episodes.
yeah.
And so that's why we decided to put them in a course because another really powerful element about this, and we're covering one of them today, again, of course, identity crisis to extend reality, is that these imaginal spaces, these paradigmatic shifts, really say more to us than if we're just extrapolating trends that are coming from the system. So this is not something we're going to talk about today, but I could say the system really is focused on atomization, linear thinking, mechanization, hyper individuality. It would be hard to disagree with, in a very consumptive, consumerist, capitalist society, colonial, settler, modernity, all these words. that is true. That's sort of what drives the system. And then when you see the trends that a lot of the trends that are manifesting, they are trends that are being born out of that system. Even ones that we might say, like, I don't know about that, Frank. It's like, what about the sharing economy and those kinds of trends? They seem, and I would agree, they are saying like we need a different way of thinking about the world. But then those very trends get co-opted and
Yeah.
subsumed by that system, So all the bikes in your city that you could use for sharing are owned by the man and by the company, and they're still making profit off of it. And so it's the point that I'm trying to make here is that these are so powerful because they're not individual trends, they're larger paradigmatic shifts and
Yeah.
imaginal ways of thinking about a transformational world. And we're seeing that by so many people that are in the futures field and even flirting with futures thinking or calling it something different today is that
Yeah.
we can't just be thinking about trends and incremental shifts and microdosing. We have to really be thinking about transformation and transformational realities. And so that's what we did back in 21 or
Yeah.
whatever, and that's what we're talking about today, and it's more relevant today than it was then.
Yeah, I think that it's very common for us to be introduced to the field of foresight and futures thinking through trend research.
Yes,
I mean, very, very
it's sort of like
common.
the starting place,
Yeah,
but then
people, not for
yeah,
everybody, but for a lot
that's
of
true.
folks.
That's true.
I think
Absolutely
we had this
true.
conversation yesterday when we think about
Yep.
our futures stool, and we think about our a three-legged stool
Mm,
that has future ready as one really important leg of the stool. Future
yes.
ready, how do I have the tools and the methods to make this a repeatable process to even start me on my journey? And lots of folks start there probably because they heard someone speak or they just feel like, gosh, there's got to be a better way to
Saw
do
the
this.
sage on the stage talking about the future.
Yeah,
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 something.
yeah, yeah. So that's future ready, a very common entry point, but there's also future empowered, which is another leg of the stool that we talk about. And here we're talking about embodying the mindsets and the behaviors and bringing others along. So, you might need the tools in that situation,
Because it's
but
one thing to say like, oh, well, we sort of did all of our homework, now we're ready for the future.
yeah,
But it's another thing to say we're literally being empowered
yes,
by the future,
yeah.
and that's a more transformational way of looking at things instead of just like I'm ready, I'm adaptive, that kind of
Yeah,
thing, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
And then finally, the third leg of the stool, not presented in any particular order, but we have future conscious. And, I think what's powerful is the ability of foresight and futures thinking to allow us to move across those three legs of the stool,
Yes.
and recognize that we can dip our toe in the water of any of
We had
those
a good
realms.
conversation about that yesterday, and we were even talking about the fact that when we really grasp the leg of the stool, this future consciousness, then it redefines empowerment and readiness. And so it's
Yeah.
like it depends on the philosophy that is like sort of like running through the river of
Yeah.
our the way we think about the future.
Yeah. But I
Yeah.
think to your point about trends and, the sharing economy or what have you, is that, one of the things that we learn really early on as futurists, as good futurists, is that number one, you never take a trend in isolation. You always have to look at what's happening around it. Why did it emerge to begin with? What are those societal values? But also the lens by which I look at that trend is
Mm,
going to determine what I see and what I don't see.
yeah.
And I think that comes back to this identity crisis component. And,
Absolutely
so
does.
much
Yeah.
of what it's so funny because every time we go through one of these topics, I'm like, oh God, this one's the best. Like last time we did Battling VUCA, if you didn't watch that
Really
one,
like that one.
that was
Thank
really good.
you.
But I love this one too. And
Yeah.
this one, I when I was reviewing the material to get ready for today, I was like, gosh, if I could intravenously take this knowledge, I know that there's no way to do that, and just pump it into everyone's brain, even if just for a moment, for them to stop and think, okay, when I'm reacting to this information, or when I'm taking in this data or this information, am I operating from the standpoint of an identity crisis, which is already loaded? It's already loaded. Am I already operating from that vantage point of fear, of distrust,
Yeah.
of what do I have to lose?
That's right.
because no matter what I show you, this is a great example. Universal basic services or universal basic income
Yep.
by its own is agnostic. It's a tool, it's an economic tool, it's a way to provide a societal safety net. And I'm going to tell you that even amongst audiences
Oh, wow.
that are extremely progressive, the reaction you get when you introduce the concept of universal basic income or universal basic services is telling. And it goes back, and a lot of times it's advanced or not advanced, but like like a US or a European certainly environment where folks have a more individualistic
Right.
perspective and metaphor, right? But even in the more quote unquote progressive audiences, they bristle often
Yeah.
at universal basic income, universal basic services. And it is largely because of this whole fear of identity, fear of losing them. I mean, how many of us begin conversations with people that we've never met? And one of the first thing you ask them is, what do you do for a living? What happens when your identity is completely tied to your career and what you do for employment? What happens when
Yeah.
we have AI and advanced technologies or economic shifts? What happens when we have new tools and methods like UBI that challenge that notion that our work is our worth and our identity comes from that?
Yeah.
This is what you're seeing. And so when we look out on the headlines and we see, oh gosh, people are protesting,
Yeah.
or, there's all this corruption or whatever, it's so easy to feel let down and feel upset and feel like, oh gosh, there's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
But if you start to peel back the onion, you realize that these are the types of issues, and they're not easy to solve. That's why they call them wicked problems. But if you can understand that this is what's driving it,
That's
then you can start to unpack it and reframe it like we did in these episodes.
It speaks volumes about what futures work is really about. Is it about these objects and these trends and just extrapolating them? Or is it really about the way our mindsets, our heart sets, our soul sets, and the way that we're thinking about reality
Yeah.
and how that unfolds? I love Melina says the new futures triangle, readiness, empowerment, and consciousness, and
Yeah.
how we can actually do work through that.
I love
Huh,
it. It's so
might have to
interesting.
test that
I
out.
know it's very meta, and I love do these live streams because we know that we have a lot of friends on the line. Um, if you haven't said hi yet, feel free to say hi. We'd love to know who's listening. But
Please.
um, I love that we can get a little bit deeper on these
Yeah,
conversations. But like, isn't it so meta that like if you had the skill sets and the mindset of a futurist, like we believe everybody has that, they have it within them, everybody has this ability, you just have to unlock them. If you have successfully unlocked these abilities, then you're not as likely to fall prey to the identity crisis that
right.
we're seeing. And so it's like, yes, foresight and futures thinking helps us unpack this and see the why, but also empowering people with
That's
foresight
right.
and futures thinking helps overcome this. So not only can you diagnose an issue like this
Mm,
using futures tools and futures thinking, but as futurists, you can empower people with this skill set and mindset, and in essence, it can be a solution to these problems at the same time.
that's right.
That's why I love what we
Yeah.
do. I
So
love what we
powerful.
do.
So powerful.
So you had
I
some,
wanted to say, by the
yes.
way, too, that our article on the futures stool,
Mm-hmm.
the foresight stool, with readiness and
Oh,
empowerment and
yes,
consciousness,
yes.
is in the latest Compass issue of Compass, the Association of Professional Futures magazine.
Yes.
So if you've not seen that, you can catch it there. Of course, it's on our website as well. But it is in the latest issue of Compass. And I was going to just say too, I wanted to relate back to something you were saying a minute ago
Yeah.
about like, you know, work is our identity and that kind of thing. Because um, my good friend, our good friend, Keely Adler,
Yes.
was sent me an article yesterday, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. And but in the article, I had been thinking all week long, it's like I just read so much stuff that it makes you forget what you're trying to remember. I don't know if it's
Wait. Stop right there. Stop right there. You read so much stuff that it makes
you
you
can.
forget
Yeah.
what you were trying to
And
remember.
if you're flipping around too much, and too much information.
I solved this problem by taking in all my media through the TikTok
And
algorithm.
probably solve the problem.
But I would have thought that reading it would have made it cement more.
I
You just
wish.
read, you just jump around. So, okay, so
No, I think it says more about my brain and it's aging,
don't be sad.
losing the folds in my
Don't be
brain.
sad.
Don't be
Don't
sad
don't be sad that it's over. Be happy
that it has.
that it happened. A lot of our
These
driving. Don't be. Don't. It's
these
okay.
podcasts are just like they're
It's
brutal.
no, it's okay. You'll be all right. So tell me, what did
I
she?
could not remember. I had a faint thought about like, oh, I want this article and I want to put
Yeah,
it in something I'm writing, and
yeah.
I don't remember the name of the person who wrote it, and I can't even remember a word to
Oh,
look it up, but I
that's
know
the
it was
worst.
about this general idea.
So you're like,
And then sure enough, like thank goodness Keely Adler to the rescue because she quoted Murray Bookchin, and I'm like, oh, it's Bookchin, that's it, that's it, that's it. And it was a different article. And so, but I love this article because it's called Utopia, Not Futurism. And he wrote this
okay,
back in the 70s, I believe.
okay.
Maybe even late 60s. I can't remember
We
exactly.
didn't give Nicole this link ahead of time, no? This one.
No, but I
Okay.
mean, you all
No,
can
it's
look it
fine.
up. It's
I just did.
Bookchin, Murray Bookchin wrote an article called Utopia, Not Futurism. It's a great article. And he's talking a lot about this like futures can t I don't agree with everything Butchin said in this article because I don't think he's talking about futures the way we are, but he just took it for face value and said, I don't like futures because it, it says like, look, this is the plumbing we've got. And so what do we do to adjust the plumbing? And he's not wrong. A lot of futures does do
No,
that.
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, let's analyze this thing and let's, screw on a new pipe or whatever.
Yeah.
Because I love this line that he says in there. He goes, a lot of futures says, now that we have a shopping mall, what do we do with the shopping mall? And he said, but the real work on futures thinking should be, why the hell do we have a shopping mall? I love that.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're talking about here. We're
Yeah.
not like, well, we've got an identity crisis. So what
Yeah.
do we do with identity and crisis? It's like, why do we have identity and why do we have crisis? As a matter of fact, and this is another article that we didn't prep, but it's like Jonathan Rowson had an article called Prefixing the World from a couple of years ago or a year ago. I can't remember when. And in the article, he says moving from polycrisis to metacrisis to is not even a crisis.
Mm,
And one of the things that he says in the article, it's not the main thrust of the article, but it's really powerful. He says, crisis mindset is a colonial mindset. And it always moves us from crisis to solution, crisis to solution, crisis to solution.
hmm.
And the crisis is built off of the solution, it's built off the crisis, it's built off the solution. And it just keeps you in that feedback loop. And so it's really interesting. Identity crisis. This is what I thought you were going to say a minute ago. It's like that's just a framing
Yeah.
because the crisis is the fact that we have a crisis because we're locked into individual identity, which
Yeah.
creates a crisis when that all inevitably was always going to collapse.
Yeah.
Hyper individualism is not sustainable,
Yep.
and it never was, and it's collapsed before, and it's collapsing big time right in front of our faces right now again.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you had referenced some additional like current stuff that again, this is not, I don't think it takes a lot of convincing that we're still facing this issue.
Oh,
But
more than ever before, probably. And we see it politically, we're seeing it economically, we're seeing it environmentally. I saw this TikTok this morning where this woman was saying, like, actually, the economy is only environmental when you think about it.
mm,
It's based off the environment. The economy is always based off the environment. So
yeah,
it's just really interesting. And I love that back sometime we said, if you look at the map, we were talking about moving from me to we.
yeah,
But I always reference this Bonita Roy YouTube video where she talks about going through the different levels of like from mine to me to I. Now I'm starting to grow up a little bit. If I
yeah.
get away from the mind to the I, and now the healthy individuation, but then I move past I into we. But then she goes further. I
Uh-huh.
like it sort of like on Beyond Zebra, Dr. Seuss's
Yeah,
on
yeah,
Beyond Zebra.
yeah.
You went A through Z, but I've got a whole new alphabet after this. And she says, because beyond we is us.
Mm,
Because the we can still be like, there's one group of we, and there's
yeah,
another group of we,
yeah,
and there's another group of we. And we have that today, And then there's us. But then it's like, if us is just human, it's not symbiotic enough. She says there's all of us, which is consciousness plus cosmos plus planet plus kin plus humans.
Mm.
And all of that together is the all of us. And that really saves us from identity crisis because it's sort of like Nora Bateson talks about when she's talking about somathacy. She's talking about these mutual learning environments. And in the Dragonfly journey, not long ago, we went through this, how this really relates to that future consciousness leg of the stool that we often call holoptic foresight dynamics. It's a big word that I'm sure never people are never going to walk around with t-shirts on that say holoptic foresight
Well, that
dynamics.
sounds like a challenge.
Yeah. But what they can take away from that is that, it's like there is a reality works in cooperative, connective, collective, collaborative, co-creative spaces and not in the me.
Yeah.
And whenever we get hyper individualized, and that even happens in trend hunting, we're like looking at them as
Mhm.
hyper individual pieces, like
Yeah.
you said a few minutes ago, then we're going to collapse into identity crisis. It's going to happen every time because reality works through relational emergence.
Mhm.
It works through the interconnected, which is the I in alive.
Mhm.
If you've ever watched any of our episodes before, you know that we talk about alive being an acronym, abductive, liminal, interconnected. That's sort of where we are in this episode,
Yeah.
vibrant and emergent. And that's how reality actually works is in this alive, interconnected, whole optic, seeing the whole.
Yeah. If you're
And
interested
yeah,
in more of the holoptic foresight dynamics, HFD, Dragonfly Journey aspect of it, we do have a community of practice on the platform I mentioned earlier. Frank leads a live discussion every couple of months to a group there that's not recorded. It's also very emergent, very powerful. They agree on a media that they're going to watch ahead of time that
mm,
Frank curates, and then they come together and commune on that. And I'm excited to say that next year we'll be bringing back our in-person retreat as well. So that's where HFD, Holoptic Foresight Dynamics, and that community really comes alive, and we're able
sort of
to go into
focusing on future
nature.
consciousness part of the leg. But
Yeah,
I think while we're there, also the empowered and ready gets reframed a little
yeah,
bit.
yeah.
So should be awesome.
But I think we wanted to talk a little bit more about Kelly, right?
Yes, Keely
Keely,
Adler.
sorry,
No, no,
Keely.
no. Yeah, yeah. I say Kelly all the time too. Um, well, I was related to what I'm just saying a moment ago because I was sharing a brand new article that I wrote this week. The future is a hell of a drug,
That's a good article. It's a really good
which
article.
is a play off of Rick James' old, phrase. Cocaine's a hell of a drug. He said on the Chappelle show one time they did this great funny skit. And Rick James, Super Freak. Remember the song Super
I'm
Freak?
pretty sure everybody does.
Super Freak.
I can't
Um,
play it because then we'll get copyright violation.
and all kinds of other violations, actually, if you play
Just
the
know
whole
that.
song.
So,
Um, the article, that's a whole different topic. The future. We're not talking about futures and the kind of future we're talking about here. We're talking about that official future again, which is a part of identity crisis, I think. But modernity's version of the future is a hell of a drug because it sucks us into this hyper individualism and puts us in identity crisis, right? And Keely Adler, who runs Radar, and all the good folks at Radar, Sarah Owen.
yeah.
They've been talking very similar to us, just using different language,
Yeah.
which I love. That's the
Yes.
holop, that's the
I
dragonfly.
love that.
It's like similar thing, as Robert Downey Jr. is saying now. It's like same task, different mask.
I
Uh,
wish you could. I wonder, have you put a superhero reference in every single one of these live streams?
I
You may
wonder, that'd be
have.
fun to go back and look and see if
You
that
may
happened.
have.
He's playing Doctor Doom, and he did play Iron Man, so everybody's wondering how that's going to work out. So, in the same universe. Um, so they've been talking about, same task, but just with a different mask, and they're calling it front porch futuring or front
I
porch
I
futures.
love it. They're
Yeah,
so clever.
they're so clever.
Yeah, the idea here is that, what I shared before about how many people get exposed to this field and find out that there is even is a field called foresight is through, a sage on the stage. Usually it's through someone at a conference, at least traditionally, and you see it now on your LinkedIn feed, it's probably got AI in the title somewhere now, but whether it's AI or the top 10 trends or the top 5 trends, and you've got an individual sort of sharing with you, attempting to download into you the future, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And so what the folks at Radar are saying is like that's not useful, and I would argue it was never useful. It and it this we love this message because we also doesn't mean that we won't speak on a stage, but we know that just doing that or going off and writing scenarios for people and handing them to them isn't going to create change because ultimately everyone needs to have their synapses firing like mine was this morning in my complexity conversation in Spanish. And so this idea of front porch futures.
Yeah, she was like, usually the way that we're fed futures is there's a sage on a stage.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I think they call it
Yeah, yeah,
keynote
yeah.
futurism
Yeah.
or something like that
Yeah.
in the article. The article is up on the chat now, so if you
Yeah.
want to look it up and you can read it for yourself. And there's so many phrases in there. And Radar's cool because they've been doing all of these sort of like they call this the year of yearning, and they're doing all of these like little micro labs.
Oh,
And
nice.
they've been taking surveys and asking people what they need and what they want. And and people have been talking about what they call microdosing agency on the
Mhm.
front porch. It's sort of the idea is that like if I just sit down on the front porch and you get come across the street and you sit on my front porch
Yes.
and we just start talking about what we need and how we would change the future and all, then there's this microdosing of agency that happens from porch to porch to porch to porch, much like the dragonfly's eye.
Yeah.
All the individual pieces of the eye come up to make a larger story, right?
Yeah. I
And
think that the front port futuring, I mean, definitely in comparison to the keynote futurism or Sage on the Stage, it's definitely giving a much more back and forth, a two-way street,
yes,
a conversation,
it's a
a
conversation.
conversation, which anyone that's involved at all in any type of activism, and we've talked this year about the 3.5% rule that if you can get 3.5% of a population activated around an issue, that's the tipping point. And the interesting thing is that a lot of people don't read sort of past that headline of 3.5%. It's not just any 3.5%. Part of what makes that rule work is that it's at at the ground level, right? Where you're having these conversations within your communities. It doesn't have to necessarily be only in person, but it's much more localized and it's a conversation. It's not just about me telling you what's going to happen in the future, which I can't tell you. And even if I did, even if I had some magical crystal ball, let me let you in on a little secret. You wouldn't be able to hear what I'm telling you anyway,
Yeah,
because of what we talked about from the very beginning is
yeah.
that you have a filter for information that changes how you're even listening to this live stream. We have, everyone that's listening to this live stream is experiencing a different live stream because you're coming at it with your worldview, with your perspective, and that's fine. But we have to unpack those as well in order to be able to make real change.
When I showed this article that I just wrote to our good friend Pablo Reyes,
I mean, I don't know. There's just something about the universe is telling us something about
he wrote it.
Spanish speaking
Yeah, oh, it's powerful.
entities, agencies,
Yeah,
and alumni and futurists that
yeah.
we need to take heed of.
He read the article yesterday that I released that the future is a hell of a drug, and he was like, "This one, this article will tear you up, and it leaves you not the same, and it shouldn't."
Yeah.
And then he said something really cool. He said, "I read that, and I know this guy's brilliant."
Yeah, he's so brilliant.
And he's written this new article. It's long. It hasn't been released yet, but I got a preview of it, and I can't
Hmm.
wait till it comes out. I think he might be trying to turn it into a full book, so he didn't want to release it. It's really awesome. And it says a very similar thing to the quote that I'm about to give you. He said about this article that I just wrote, he said, "What if futuring isn't about trying to like find a future, but it's really about detoxing from modernity?" I was like, "Ooh, that is so powerful." Because
Yeah.
he said, because then Now we're released and we just sit on the front porch with one another
Yeah.
and we change the world neighborhood by neighborhood by neighborhood.
It's not what should we do at the mall? It's why do we have a mall to
Why the
begin with?
hell do we have a mall?
Why do we have a mall?
Yeah, it's like exactly. I love that Butchin. Thank you, Murray
Yeah.
Butchin.
Yeah.
What should we do with your shopping mall now? It's like, why do you have a shopping mall?
Yeah.
And that's like the future of work. Why the hell do we have work?
I have good news for
Yeah.
you. I have good news and bad news.
Oh,
We may not have it in the future. So, yeah, and I think that, this front porch featuring this extended reality. What are you laughing about? Oh yeah, this is our
they
live
need
streams
to,
are basically
they need to at
love.
least give me a universal basic income.
Oh, if there's no future of work. Um, no, I was thinking about extended reality as we defined it,
Yeah.
the front porch featuring as our friends at Radar talk about it. How do we get there? How do we, as foresight professionals, because I know that's who we draw to these conversations, how do we get there? How do we facilitate these conversations so that people do feel like they have agency? People do feel hope and optimism for the future, and they're not trapped by fear about what they might lose, fear of losing who they are, how they define themselves. One of the things that I think is so powerful that we have to do more of is, recognize that this is a global ecosystem of futurists. And
It's powerful.
again, I think it's just the timing of this conversation. But, over the last few days, we've talked quite a bit about, language barriers and how, your experience, how you're taking in this information. Obviously, one of the major ways that that's defined is what your native language is and what you're listening to it. And foresight is still very much driven, largely, I think, as a percentage by English speaking practitioners, and the resources are largely, I think, in English still. And so I
I
think
think so.
one thing that we
That's
can,
it's changing, but yeah.
it's changing, but one thing that I'm excited about that we're going to be a part of is continuing to challenge ourselves to translate materials and to do so in a way that's respectful and cognizant of not just the language, but the culture and the other aspects that come. It's not just a simple word on a page, right? These ideas are complex, and so if you're going to truly front porch future, you're going to need to do it in the language of that community.
That's exactly right. And I think if you go read that article, I saw the name of it up here. It's better than I even made it. It was like, what if sitting on the front porch could change the world? I love that. That's so cute
Yeah.
and powerful. Um, and that's the cool thing, right? Because I remember the article, I've only read it once. I need to go through it again. But I remember her saying something to the effect of like the front porch in Singapore is different than the front porch in,
Yeah.
but if it's from front porch to front porch and it's spreading,
Yeah.
and then you're going to have a different conversation in Singapore's
Yeah.
front porch, whatever that
Yeah.
means,
And
but it's also going to be connected.
yeah, I think, yeah, to your point, I think we often say that no two people have the same past or the same present. The
Yeah.
future is the one place that we can co-create. And I think that yeah, not creating silos with languages, but creating those bridges with people. And I love that every day we get pinged by people that are like, can I translate this? Can I translate that? And we're in a position now to be able to start doing that. And I think with programs like the host program
Mm.
that we're doing, where we're encouraging you as practitioners to recruit and mobilize your communities. And we provide you the content and the platform by which to do it, giving you all a safe place to practice foresight on your front porch, and change the world by leveraging the trust that your network has with you,
I like what you did there. That's
and
good.
democratize foresight in your neck of the woods,
Mm.
because that's the only way it works. The only way to scale this effort is for each of us to feel the responsibility that we all shoulder.
Yeah.
When we learn about foresight and futures thinking, What you don't know when you're going into it is that you're gonna, with great power comes great responsibility. There's another one of your superhero references right
Spider-Man,
there.
Spider-Man.
With great power comes great responsibility, that you're responsible now with sharing that knowledge and with bringing others along. And sometimes it could feel like a burden, but that's why we create communities and opportunities like this.
Community and community is so important. As a matter
Yeah,
of fact, you were I love what you said about the host program
yeah,
being a type of front porch future
it
because it
really is.
absolutely
It
is.
really is.
It's a great reflection of it. And there's other ways that happens too. Like earlier I told you that, I wouldn't mind us sharing Ann Kaspari's one of her latest articles, which is called Chasing Coherence. And she notes that, back in the day, and probably many of you know Ann's work. She's a pretty famous integral practitioner, but also a good friend of Benita Roy and Nora Bateson, and in her own right, powerhouse. And she's been writing for Emerge recently, a series of articles about the difference between cohesion and coherence.
Cohesion and coherence. Okay.
Yeah. Cohesion is more of the sort of like a lot
Fall
of
in
a lot
line.
of me's getting together.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And the coherence is like what emerges when we stop trying to force a conversation
Hmm.
to rally around a certain thing, and we drop the ego, and we finally get to a place where we're dropping the introductory phase and who's got the most political power in the room, because those things always come up, right?
Right.
And then after we've sat with that for a while and we let an agenda go, then what coheres as we start to like come into a cosmo vision, a cosmo mind,
Yeah.
and what starts to cohere and what emerges out of that,
Yeah.
which again is right back to the dragonfly journey again,
Yeah.
the cooperative evolutionary trait, cooperative perceives what really wants to emerge. The individuals are even getting together, but from an individual perspective, will not perceive what wants to emerge. It forces something to emerge
Yeah.
instead. And that's very different. And that's front porch featuring, and that's moving into extended reality.
Mm.
Coherence is extended reality. Cohesion is identity
I
crisis.
think it's interesting because, like a lot of things, I think foresight as a field, when it sort of first began, largely male dominated
Yep,
and all
absolutely.
of that good stuff. And
White
so
male dominated.
you said it, but I'll take it.
I guess I can say it.
Um, but I think that, and not to offend anybody, but traditionally, the that type of individual would lead more to an ego that would drive towards that sage on a stage
Oh,
and the keynote,
absolutely.
right? Look, everybody likes to be clapped for.
Even somebody as amazing as Buckminster Fuller, who is
Yeah.
considered, one of the sort of like, I don't think he ever considered himself a futurist. Maybe he did, maybe I'm wrong about that, but
Yeah.
he certainly wrote some amazing things.
Yeah.
And if you're reading Buckminster Fuller today, you're reading good
Yeah.
stuff. But I mean, I think keep us in the same place. You can
Yeah.
say, look, I'm Buckminster Fuller. I'm a white guy
Absolutely.
on the
I
stage, and
mean,
you can't
we
help it,
we know
It's
that
the
when
patriarchy.
you talk about the future's a hell of a drug, power is very intoxicating,
Yeah.
right? And so when you are, in a position of power, which, we might find ourselves in, it's, I think, sometimes human nature, if we're not careful, that we fall into that trap. But I am excited to see how the field is shifting and changing.
Yeah.
Even the APF, as you were talking about yesterday, how it's shifting its leadership to be much more representative of the globe,
It's
of the
actually the
world.
most radical shift in the APF. And the APF was first formed in 99 or 2000 or 2001 or something. So it's been around for 25 years now. And so it's not an old organization. Um, but um, but I mean, this is the most radical shift
Yeah.
in 25 years it's had. I mean, everybody is on there is young, and it's not about age, or whatever, because you can be my age and
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 still
and,
be hip.
I mean, obviously,
You
look
are
at me.
so hip.
Obviously, look at me.
So hip.
But it's about the way we think about the world, and it does often take that, and this radical shift is taking place the same way that needs to take place in political parties, and
Yeah.
there's other things that
So
start
I
happening.
think the front porch featuring, as we've now called it,
Yeah.
is definitely more accessible, more attainable with the changing voices that we're seeing in the field. And I think as foresight practitioners, if you're listening and you're a foresight practitioner and you're charged with essentially bringing others along, right? The conversations you have with people, are some of the most important conversations because you're often the first one to imprint on them about what foresight is and what foresight isn't. And so I really hope that you also take, into account when you are sharing what foresight is and isn't, and that we take heed and that we think about the community aspect, the communal aspect, the all of us that we've been
The
talking,
all of us, the all of
all
us.
of those pieces, because that's again a lever that we all have. Like, sometimes it could feel overwhelming to
Yep,
deal with these issues, but in reality, we all have, unique opportunities to create change in the systems that are in place right now.
yep,
And the APF is a great example of that shift, as well as all the other amazing communities of practice that are blossoming all over the globe. And,
yeah. Much like radars, and of course, what we're doing with the Dragonfly Journey, and there's many others, of course, as well. I mean, Sohail and Ivana do so much good work
yeah,
around this because they really promote transformational futuring over strategic foresight.
yeah.
So it's so
I
powerful.
think the other thing that sometimes prevents practitioners from doing the foresight work that is not just intentional, but like relational.
Yeah.
Like sometimes people ask us all the time, like, "Oh gosh, don't you get nervous when you speak in front of a crowd?" And sometimes it's more nerve-wracking to have a one-on-one
Oh,
conversation with just a few people
it
where
is
you're completely
vulnerable.
vulnerable, yeah, and humble than it is to be on the stage with a microphone. You're the only one talking, right?
Maybe you
So,
haven't spoken in front of a crowd a lot. Maybe that's why you would get nervous. But it's like, to me, I've done it for so long that it's you almost block out, and you don't know what anybody's thinking or saying.
right,
Yeah.
but which makes it in some ways easier
Right, exactly.
than speaking in a small environment in a front porch
They might
setting.
all hate everything I'm saying, but I imagine to myself when I'm on stage, they all love me. And when I'm with five people in the front porch, it's like here comes the different viewpoints and challenge things. Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
So my point there is I think a lot of us suffer from a little bit of imposter syndrome when we go into this, especially if we are the type of people that maybe don't have a huge ego, which is, I think, really, really sets you up perfectly for what we're talking about. But that might make you reticent to share your ideas or your thinking with others. And again, I would encourage you to find your group and, whether it's with us at My TFSX and TFSX or one of the other many, many groups, SOIF. SWAF has some great community building going on now where they're matching up folks from the older multi-generational
Oh,
futuring. I love
I
that.
don't remember the name of the program.
Yeah, it's
That's
like
a shame. That's not right. That I shouldn't.
it's
But you're right.
it's the intergenerational component that they're doing with
Well, the
SWAF. Yeah.
intergenerational fairness,
No, yeah, it's a different
something,
one.
but yeah, there's
Yeah,
actual program now.
where
It's
they're
called something like
matching. Yeah,
Merge or something like. But
yeah,
yeah, they're like they're matching mentors with people that are. Yeah, yeah. It's
yeah.
amazing.
So my point in saying all that is that if you're feeling a little bit hesitant in having these conversations, I see you. I do. I'd encourage you to find a safe space to begin to do that because it is in those front porch settings, in those cubicles, in the water cooler, in our grocery stores, in our kids' schools where the real change is going to happen.
That's right.
Not on the LinkedIn page, not necessarily on the keynote stage, but in these small, quiet spaces where people feel more comfortable sharing with you as well
That's
their
right.
fears. And so we can move
And their
from,
dreams, and
yeah,
then those become a part of the dragonfly's eye.
so true.
I was sharing with all of the team this past week that somebody had come to the last retreat, and then they were saying, and I took the holoptic dragonfly's eye idea back to the native tribe that I was working with in the Yukon in Canada, and they were like, "Oh, this sounds like the buffaloes something or another," and everything. And I'm like, "See, that's amazing," because I never would have known
Yeah.
that, and it adds a layer that I don't know, and that's transcontextual, that's mutual learning, that's semathecy, that's the extended reality we're talking about. There's a whole part of reality I'm missing when I don't hear your voice, when I don't hear your dreams, when I don't hear that country's dreams, when I don't hear that people's dreams,
Yeah.
and they've gotten paved over. And the only future that matters is the all of us. And I say this in the end of my new article too. It's like if you want to get unaddicted from the future, because you are addicted to the future, and so am I. And you might think, no, I'm not, but you are. and and we all are. And the only way we get unaddicted is through this beautiful medicine called all of us. That's extended reality.
Mm-hmm. It's just
And it wipes away crisis. And then you get out of crisis
yeah.
mindset, which is just go on and on crisis, crisis, crisis. Get off the crisis train. I'm not saying there's not troubles. I'm not saying there's not a
Yeah.
crisis. But if we live in crisis mindset, we never get into the extended reality, into the dream.
Well, ultimately, and if whether you call it manifesting or futuring or whatever you call it, we know that what you spend your time thinking and dreaming and imagining about is what ends up happening. And for far too many people, they don't have space or time or feel like they have agency to dream about better, more equitable
That's right.
futures. And that is not a glitch. That's by design.
Yeah, it's not a
Okay.
bug, it's a feature.
That's by design. And so as foresight professionals,
Back to my article again. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
yeah, we have to, really help people understand that there is incredible value in imagining better futures and our current infatuation with efficiency and the present and what have you done for me lately and the bright shiny objects and all of that and even disruption and all of those
Oh yeah.
infatuations.
We've been talking about that lately, right?
Yeah, yeah.
This whole idea of disruption just being a colonial way to spark change, but it never breaks free from the system. I'm
Yeah,
disrupting inside the system.
just
Big
it
deal.
just breaks shit, but
Yeah.
like
I
to
just
what
I
end?
broke something inside the system
To
for
what
the
end?
sake of the system, right back inside the system
Yeah.
again,
To what
That's
end?
not paradigm change.
Yeah. So again, our goal with this series this year is to continue what has been core of the Wicked Opportunities mantra, which is, optimism and hope, but also very clear tools and methods and mindsets to support that and creating community around that. So I think today's conversation around identity crisis to extended reality and the time we spent on talking about doing futures on the front porch. I hope you have found it super helpful and inspiring because we love spending this time with you all. We'll be back together again next month, which would be August. And I cannot remember the
Goes by
topic,
fast, doesn't it?
but I am sure. Look at that. She's already put it on there because Nicole knows. Systemic. Oh, yes. Systemic barriers. That's a good one. That is a really, really
Right in
good
line.
one.
We sort of it's a segue from what we talked
It's
about
really good.
today.
It's
Yeah.
really good. If you're interested in diving deeper into these conversations, again, join us as a member of the collective on MyTFSX. That's our subscription level for $165 a year. You get access to the course, the curated podcast, the maps, all of that good stuff, as well as the Dragonfly journey and our entire interactive toolkit with recipes and workshops. We hope you find it useful. Again, keep your eyes out because we will be hosting another information session for the host program. That's our apprenticeship program that I was referring to earlier. If you want to mobilize your community using Foresight, we've got a turnkey, easy way for you to do it. We can monetize your practice. We can help you build your pipeline and help you feel confident in moving forward with setting up your practice or continuing your practice. So the host apprenticeship program will be launching our next cohort soon, and we have an info session happening in September. Thank you all for joining us today. It was super good. Thanks, Mr.
So
Spencer.
good, Melina, Tom. Uh, I know
Until
that Molly is on here.
until we
I know there's
find
others. So
until we find another one of your relatives, maybe.
Who knows?
Maybe next time we'll come back with an
The
update.
ghost of Hugo.
The update of
Justice
your
for like
hashtag justice for Hugo.
It's good.
I mean, Hugo
Send that to Nathan today. He'll appreciate
could have been like Frank and like, I mean, I don't know what would have been something.
it.
Hugo.
I know, and I went back through the Bible, the family Bible, and there's not like somebody's his last name is Hugo, middle name is Hugo.
Yeah.
They just said like, what can we, Maximilian or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, it felt really painful.
Poor Hugo.
Bad for
Poor
Hugo.
Hugo. All right. We will see you all next time on the Wicked Opportunities live stream. Until then, take care of yourselves.
Take
We'll
care.
see you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.